on the contract for deed, guess what? You're the owner of record if you didn't know that. You're going to get notices. You're going to get a lot of notices, especially if they're not doing things. If they have junk in their yard, if they, the health department will give you notices if they've got like something going on that's hazardous to whatever the code enforcer says is hazardous to the area. We've gotten weed notices before. Obviously, if they're not paying their taxes or they are paying their taxes, you're going to get all those notices because you're the deeded owner. I try to argue with the county officials all the time, like, I'm not the owner of the house. This person is. And they don't care because you're on the owner of record. Forfeitures are typically, they're unlikely. I think I've had one out of several hundred land contracts I've owned that's actually, whenever they do go to foreclosure, I had to go through foreclosure as opposed to forfeiture. I think I've had one that's been a forfeiture. So needless to say, a lot of judges are saying they have some equity in there and you have to just foreclose anyway. So there's really very small use cases to have a land contract or a contract for deed. But if you're able to just do the note mortgage, note deed of trust, that's exactly what you want to do. So for note terms, I always say if you shorten the AM and make it affordable for the buyer, it's just going to be better for you because it's going to make the monthly principal and interest payment a lot higher, but you don't want it to be unaffordable. So I kind of have a rule of thumb that's around 1% of the loan amount is typically what I try to make the monthly payment. So for example, if it's a $100,000 loan amount, I try to make the P&I payment around $1,000. So a combination of interest rate and amortization. Sometimes I see loans that are 50, 60,000 and they make a 30-year mortgage on it. And that's just like ridiculous. Number one, it makes the payment really small. So yes, that's really affordable for the buyer. But if you're trying to sell that note, the discount is going to be so heavy on that note to buy a loan on it that it just doesn't make sense. So on anything less than 100,000, I'd probably say you're going to be 15 years or less on it. And once you get to 150 to 200,000, it's probably like a 20-year mortgage. And then anything over 200,000, I'd probably say a 30-year mortgage makes sense. Rates, there are usury laws in certain states that you can't go above certain rates. For example, Pennsylvania sticks out to me. They have I forget what they call it. They call it Regulation Act 6, I think. And they have a bulletin that goes out that says exactly what you can make the rate for seller financing. I think when I looked last couple months ago, it was like 7.5%. So if you made a note that was above that, you'd be breaking the usury laws in that state, for example. There aren't many states that have, what I would say ridiculous usury laws, but there are some that do. So just be aware. Texas is not one of them. They have a pretty friendly rate. You don't have to worry about running into that unless you're charging, above 12, 15% interest rates. I want to say the ceiling is like 18 or 20%. Indiana used to be something like 25%, but that's just too much interest.
I want to say if you stay within 5% of prime, you should be good. You should be covered in all states, somewhere around there.
That's a good rule of thumb, except for Pennsylvania. I just know that for sure. It's like 7.5%, I would say.
That's why I only stick with Texas, man.
Texas
is one state I have
friendly state.
Deal with. That's it. Yes, sir.
So here's what I commonly see, and this is what I would do if it was my house note or land note I was creating. I'd probably be around 9.5 to 11% for a house note. The smaller the loan balance, the more interest rate I would put on it, and it would be the inverse of that as you go up in loan amount. And same thing for land. It's typically around 10 to 12%. So the smaller tracts are getting 12%. The larger tracts, the $100,000, $150,000 tracts are getting closer to 10%. That's the range you'd want to be. If you want me to throw a dart, that's kind of, if you're in that happy zone there, you're going to be pretty commensurate to what average is. Escrowing for taxes and insurance is important, and it definitely takes the burden off you, like I mentioned before. Obviously, with land, there's not going to be insurance, but you can escrow for taxes. Note and mortgage, note deed of trust. Avoid contract for deed if you can. In some use cases, it is, makes sense to do a land contract, but you always want to go for the note and mortgage, note deed of trust when you can.